Good afternoon, ma'am. There's a backlight on your background.
Yeah, how to remove it?
If you use a blur background, then it can reduce.
Okay.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Are you talking to me or Mrs. Parikh?
Mrs. Parikh.
Okay, fix that things, yes.
If you background blur the background, then background light will reduce.
Mohit, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Because I have lost a lot of disturbance. Something is going on.
What about me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But you know, I don't hear Anjana that well. Let me check.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you properly.
You know, it may be a problem at my end, but does everybody else hear her well?
We can hear you very well.
Because I have my usual stuff is in another room with Anoki there. So I'm in another place within the house. Oh, so many people have joined.
But you logged from the Dr. Prabal Pratap Ghosh link. How can it is?
Yeah, you have to use your link. Mohit, can you send him her again?
Yes, ma'am. I am sending your link. Is a link which you used. This is the Prabal link. I am sending your link.
Yeah, now?
Yes.
Good. Now, fine. I straightened out things. Okay.
Yeah. No, but still her name, she has Dr. Prabal Pratap Ghosh's name.
Because I am in another, okay. My name appears as Kirit Parikh. Prabal Pratap Ghosh, kaise?
Prabal Pratap Ghosh. Mohit.
How is it?
Ma'am, I just send you the your link on jparik.irade. So
Okay.
please take the mail
Okay.
and log in again.
I'll get that. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just, then I might as well log out of this.
Mohit, are you there?
Yeah, I am here.
So let me share the screen also. Just for
Okay. I am stopping my screen.
Okay. So you will control the screen, right? You will give us the right whenever someone needs, like Deepak will need. Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay.
I am co-host and might be Manju is a host at right now. Manju, please confirm.
Yes, Mohit, I am the host. I am just changing the rights to you.
Okay, that's good. No, please, Manju, you hold the host right. I have taken the screenshot, so please.
Okay, you want me to be the host?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Another 20, right? Hello,
Uh,
you hear me now, no?
yes.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
And another 15 minutes, I'll be back.
Yes. Yes. 15 minutes time you have. Yeah.
हाँ 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 I see. I see. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. हाँ yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Right. Right.
A lot to lot extent. We are probably having some
Yeah.
impact from
Bus.
from 2050 onwards.
Yeah, fine. But
That's also possible.
okay, fine. Huh?
So I just disaggregate this and show it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Is the light too much at the back?
camera ऊंचो कर, so your head doesn't get cut off.
No, but is the light too much at the back because of the window is open and it's okay. Nah, that's worse.
Like earlier session, Deepak will present the event.
Yeah, Deepak, you are also master of ceremony.
Yes.
I think we are waiting for Professor Rangan Banerjee. If he has
Mhm.
joined, we can start.
Yeah. Yes.
Want to turn this on?
Yeah, okay. Not too much.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are just waiting for Professor Rangan Banerjee to come online, and we'll be starting as soon as he's here. Just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, Rangan has joined.
Okay.
Namrata, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the discussion on decarbonization challenges and solutions for Indian steel industry. This discussion is being held as part of the project on long-term decarbonization of Indian steel industry with hydrogen as one option. This project is supported and funded by the Technology Mission Division, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. Integrated Research and Action for Development in collaboration with Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry is executing the project. I am Deepak Sharma, a research analyst at IRADE, and it is my honor to introduce all of you to the distinguished speakers and panelists of today's event who have graciously agreed to share their valuable knowledge and insights on this very important topic. I would like to now invite the Executive Director of Integrated Research and Action for Development, also member of the former Prime Minister's Council on Climate Change and the recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize awarded to IPCC authors in 2007, Dr. Jyoti Parikh, to welcome and deliver the opening remarks. Welcome, Dr. Jyoti Parikh, ma'am. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Deepak. Welcome to this webinar from my side on this seminar organized jointly with FICCI, our partner. This is the project sponsored by the DST, and my DST connection was actually quite old when we worked on bringing hydrogen mission way back for 3-4 decades ago. But I think now the time is ripe because the whole world is getting ready for energy transition. In fact, IRADE's broad scope of work of all what we do ultimately ends up into energy transition related activities. We have done electric vehicles and also how states can do climate mitigation and energy transition, of course. And we have done also technology assessment on biofuels, carbon capture and storage, and now hydrogen. In fact, now I welcome also Professor Rangan Banerjee and also all the participants and panelists from industry as well as the ministry representatives, and all of these people really is how we look at any subject at IRADE, that let's bring all stakeholders from all walks of life and see how they perceive it. And hydrogen right now, it's about to secure its energy system, but not yet quite there. So whether it would be suitable for steel, power, transport, all these debates are going on, and Niti Aayog, of course, is in forefront of that. We would like to have your views into this so that our work gets richer. Anjana, my colleague, Dr. Anjana Das, has been working on this for some time. And actually, all of us were together at one point in Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research, and Rangan and I did a book on demand side management. Now, hydrogen is both a part of demand side management as well as supply side management. Supply side because it can also it also can be one of the supply or carrier for the energy system, and also demand side for steel and cement and other sectors, which are really where it fits much more right now, it seems to us. So we look forward to your inputs, and I'm glad that people seem to have enthusiastically welcomed this seminar, judging by the participations here at 140 people. So all the best and do let us know how you see this exercise and how we can improve upon it. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Jyoti Parekh, for your opening remarks. And it is my special privilege and an honor to now invite the Director, Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, and also who has come from Forbes, who has also come from IIT Bombay. He's the Forbes Marshall Chair Professor in the Department of Energy Science and Engineering. His areas of interest include energy management, modeling of energy systems, energy planning and policy, hydrogen energy, and fuel cells. Professor Rangan Banerjee, welcome, and please deliver your opening remarks. Thank you.
So, good afternoon, and it's a pleasure and privilege to be here and with you virtually. And I'd like to thank Professor Jyoti and Kirit Parekh from IRADE for giving me this opportunity. Steel, as all of us know, is actually a very important metal and has been actually at the forefront of all infrastructure development and is basically characterized as one of the main parameters affecting an economic growth of countries in the developing phase. We in India have a very large and booming steel industry. We are the second largest producers of steel. And today, if you look at it, one of the challenges facing the steel industry, facing many industries, is to look at what is the impact, adverse environmental impact, and we are looking at the greenhouse gas impact. And typically, if you look at our steel industry, we are saying that 2 or a little more than 2 tons per ton of steel is the CO2 that we are emitting. And the challenge is, how do we make steel and make it low carbon or zero carbon? So, you know, there is this whole talk about the hard to abate sectors, and many of the hard to abate sectors, steel, cement, aluminum, are sectors in which we in India have actually a very strong industrial base. So these affords both a challenge as well as an opportunity for all of us. And we know that in each of these cases, there are actually technologies out there. So I think you will hear the report, the study will talk about some of the technologies. There's a European initiative called Hybrid. There are multiple sets of different technologies that are possible. One can go through the direct reduction, the DRI route, and that DRI can be converted, and then you can have an electric arc furnace. The electricity can come from renewables. One can think in terms of looking at efficiency. One can think in terms of renewables. One can think in terms of changing the process. And in each of this, our steel industry has made some progress, and some of our steel players are also globally active. So for instance, if you look at Tata Steel, in the Ijmuiden plant, Tata Steel is actually planning to go completely on the hydrogen route. Earlier, there was a plan to do something with carbon capture and storage. Now the focus has been, they want to make a completely looking towards green steel. In some of our industries within the country, there have also been some demonstrations. There's been a demonstration of a 5 tons of CO2 per day carbon capture and storage based on the methylamine technology from the blast furnace flue gases which are coming out. You use the methylamine CCS, and then the products which are there are used in the rest of, so it's like carbon capture, utilization and storage is relatively smaller, but it's a pilot which shows that things work. We have had in the country, we have had this perform, achieve and trade, the PAT scheme, which has been instrumental in all of our manufacturing industry and the steel plants. Each one benchmarks itself in terms of what's the specific energy per unit of output. And the next step is to look at that in terms of specific CO2 or specific GHG gas per unit of output. So this is another domain which will go ahead, and if one can get incentives in terms of some credits or some incentives, that could also work out. Now, the whole issue in this is there's been significant investments in infrastructure. We have the blast furnaces, we have the industries already in place. The steel that is being made is globally competitive. When you want to modify this requires significant investments. And these investments are not going to just happen in a business as usual case. We need to create mechanisms where we have reasonably large scale pilots. And these pilots, it's not evident whether it is going to be green hydrogen or it is going to be, and then green hydrogen from which source. There are multiple different technology routes. We need to be able to assess for ourselves which of these routes are likely to be most viable. How do we look at retrofit situations? How do we look at our existing manufacturing facilities, and how do we make them more efficient? How do we green them gradually? And what does it mean in terms of the competitiveness of our steel industry, iron and steel industry? What does it mean in terms of the way in which we are going to look at the existing infrastructure moving? What does it mean in terms of the employment as well as the cost of the steel that we make? So there are many challenges, and I think studies like this that we are going to have presented today enable us to visualize different futures. And this visualization of futures needs to be then articulated to different stakeholders. So we need to talk to industry, we need to see what is it that they can do, what would they need. We need to look at academics and research organizations, because there will have to be a lot of innovation. And all of this finally links up with the economic growth that we have. What does the transition imply? And these are questions which are not easy to answer. There are no clear-cut answers. There has been a goal set by our Prime Minister in terms of the net zero by 2070. We've had a goal set in terms of us becoming Atmanirbhar. We have goals related to the growth of green hydrogen. But in order to actually implement these goals on the ground, we need a lot in terms of technology development. We need a lot in terms of innovation. We need a lot in terms of, as we do things, to cross-check and see what is really the impact. So I think this is something where we need to create new models by which the industry, the academia, and the government work together so that we can have reasonably large-scale pilots, assess them independently to see which ones, which technologies, what impacts, and then make the necessary investments. Because this is really important, because we want to make sure that our industry is globally competitive, and yet we can have growth and jobs, but do this without increasing our carbon dioxide footprint, and actually reducing and going towards zero in the industry, net zero for industry. If you look at the entire industrial sector, if you look at it from a thermodynamic viewpoint, we can actually produce the same outputs using less energy, less carbon. Technically, this is all possible. But practically, in order to realize it, there's a lot to be done. And there's a role for modelers, there's a role for researchers, there is a role for technology development, there's a role for industry. And so I'm delighted to have this opportunity to say a few words to you at the beginning of this session. And I look forward to actually reading a copy of the report and seeing how we can take these, the results of the study forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Banerjee, for an insightful opening remarks. I am now privileged to invite Ms. Neha Verma, Director, Ministry of Steel, Government of India. Ms. Neha Verma joined Ministry of Steel in 2022, where she is posted as director in the field of energy, environment, sustainability, and climate change, with focus on decarbonization of the steel industry, while working in the areas of circular economy, energy efficiency, clean energy transition, green hydrogen, as well as CCUS. Basically, all the decarbonization strategies available for the Indian steel industry. She has been an Indian Forest Service officer with 17 years of experience in the field of natural resource management, biodiversity, wildlife, sustainability, and climate change. I welcome Ms. Neha Verma, Director, Ministry of Steel, to deliver her remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak. Good afternoon, all the eminent speakers on this webinar and the other participants. I first like to thank Vicky and Irade for giving me an opportunity to talk to you all and have an interaction with you all. So we are discussing a very important topic today on decarbonization of steel sector. A lot has been already told by Dr. Banerjee from IIT Delhi. And as he said, I kind of second his views that we are on a path of growth, and steel is a very, very important part of our growth story. Steel is the backbone of any economy, and growth of this sector is very imperative for the growth of the country. Hundreds of lakhs of crores of infrastructure projects are in pipeline in the country, which is going to create enormous demand of steel in the times to come. And as you would also know, our per capita consumption of steel in India is right now 77 kgs, while the average of the world is around 269 kgs. So we are much, much far behind on our steel consumption too, which is again an indicator of the economy. So we are slated for growth. And that's why our National Steel Policy 2017 has envisioned to increase our production capacity from current of 154 million tons to 300 million tons by 2030. So that means we are supposed to be doubling our capacity by 2030. And if you look at the other side of the coin, other face of the coin, as we are discussing here, that steel is a hard to abate sector. Steel contributes almost about 12% to the total carbon emissions of the country. As we grow, we are going to emit more carbon. And this is very, very challenging. Striking a balance between steel industry's ambitious capacity enhancement targets, as well as India's COP26 commitment for reaching net zero by 2070 is a mammoth task. And also, steel sector is highly capital intensive with long-term technology lock-in, thus locking in emission inertia for long. Any capacity expansion right now by using legacy technology and conventional feedstock will not only jeopardize our achieving of our net zero targets, but may also lead to stranded assets in the future. So we are at a very critical juncture of growth. We are at a crossroads, and there is a very urgent situation to address the decarbonization of the steel industry through a very robust strategy. And as you would know, this Indian steel sector has a carbon emission intensity of 2.55 tons of carbon dioxide per ton of crude steel, while the world average is around 1.89. So why are we so behind the world? There are a few techno-economic reasons behind that. One, we have very limited availability of scrap, while the world produces 35% of their steel from scrap, which has relatively very low carbon footprint. We also have low availability of natural gas and high cost of natural gas in the country. Again, our emissions, our feedstock is mainly coal dependent. And thirdly, our iron ore quality is not that high. The iron content in the iron ore available in the country is low, because of which there is a high coke rate, high consumption of coal, and hence our emissions are high. So, so these are the major challenges we have been facing in the steel industry. And ultimately, if we talk about what is the path we are looking for, the whole transition from 2.55 emission intensity, that means around 300 megaton of carbon dioxide emission right now, to net zero by 2070, I would say that the only pathway is transition from the fossil fuel intensive blast furnace and coal-based DRI electric arc furnace route to the gas-based DRI electric arc furnace route with 100% hydrogen, 100% renewable, and capturing of the remaining carbon through CCUS technology is going to be a future transition pathway. But technology is a very, very big question mark. If we talk about here and now, nowhere in the world there is a proven technology to make green steel with use of 100% green hydrogen in DRI process through, excuse me, I'll just shut down my phone. Yeah. So there's nowhere this technology is available on a commercial level. Yes, Hybrid is doing it. Hybrid has produced fossil-free steel in Sweden. But again, it's on a pilot basis. And again, the same challenge lies with CCUS. We are not yet matured with carbon capture technology to have it at a commercial level. So with all these challenges, Ministry of Steel is definitely committed to lead our industry towards a smoothened transition for green steel. We are currently working on a national level policy on green steel, where we are trying to devise the strategy, roadmap, and action plan for the decarbonization of whole steel sector. And we are also working on solutions ranging from carbon minimization to carbon avoidance to carbon utilization. We are trying to set mandates for the industry for carbon emission reduction. And these mandates are going to be incremental because there's no binary switch for decarbonization. We have to move slowly, and we might be using different pathways at different phases and stages of transition. Currently, we have categorized our efforts into 5 pillars for decarbonization. These are energy efficiency, use of renewable energy, material efficiency through pellets and scrap, use of green hydrogen, and CCUS, that is carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Energy efficiency, as Professor Banerjee has already talked about, our steel industry, which is quite progressive and has a global footprint, is already working on energy efficiency. There is a good penetration of BAT's best available technologies, and through PAT scheme, we have obtained significant carbon reduction. Use of renewable energy is again another low-hanging fruit, which doesn't require any technological intervention, and switching from fossil-based electricity to renewable energy can help us save our emissions by as much as 20%. So by 2030, we are very hopeful that our industry will be able to reduce their emission by 20% just by using energy efficiency and switching over to renewable energy. And then again, important factor, as I just said, is material efficiency. We want to increase the pellet use in steel plants, so that coal rate and coke rate is reduced, as well as, of course, as I just talked, use of scrap reduces the carbon emissions significantly. And Ministry of Steel is working with NITI Aayog and MoRTH for effective implementation of vehicle recycling policy and scrap policy of the ministry. Green hydrogen holds lots of promises because, as you know, green hydrogen, the hydrogen here is replacing carbon molecule in doing a reduction job of iron ore to iron. Right now, our industry is right now also ready to use some of the green hydrogen in their processes. So we can start blending green hydrogen into a feedstock to some extent currently also, then keep on slowly increasing this percentage by 2030. And beyond 2030, we are looking forward to developing our own technologies for producing 100% green hydrogen DRI. Problem with green hydrogen is we don't have an ecosystem yet in place for production, for storage, and for transportation, as well as the costs are prohibitive. So unless we get the hydrogen at an industry comfortable zone, we will not be able to use. So MNRE is working on it, and we are very hopeful that within few years, when the green hydrogen cost reduces, we'll be able to use green hydrogen in our blast furnace also by injecting it along with PCI through TUS, as well as in our vertical shaft DRA making process. CCUS is very, very important because we have a huge blast furnace capacity. 60% of our steel making is produced through blast furnace route. So whatever we do, we cannot bring down the carbon emissions of the blast furnace to a zero level. Blast furnace are really long-lived. So ultimately, carbon capture holds the solution for decarbonizing the blast furnace. And we are very, very hopeful that India's research institutes and like IITs would be able to help us out. And I invite Dr. Banerjee, Professor Banerjee from IIT Delhi, if you think we can join hands in any way to work on the research front, we'll be really glad to, because this is very important. Technology penetration and steel industry is one of the very key, is an important enabler for the transition. Along with these issues, we are also trying to deal with the demand side driver for the steel industry. That's very important. Unless we have a demand, we won't have much incentive for these producers to produce green steel. So we are, and for that, first and foremost required is to define green steel. We talk about green steel, we talk about low carbon emission steel, but what exactly is green steel? How much low carbon? Is it net zero green steel is green steel? So we are working on a definition, and hopefully within a limited time frame, we would be able to come up with a definition for the whole steel industry, which will benchmark what is a green steel, what are green steel products. And we are also looking forward to develop some kind of a procurement incentives in the government for the green products. Like government consumes about 20% of the total steel produced in the country. So that's another initiative which ministry is taking. So with this, I would like to end the session. Just want to emphasize the need of research, development, demonstration, innovation in the steel industry, because we can go only so much ahead with whatever is available right now. To take a leap forward from 2030 to a drastic reduction in the emissions, and I would say for deep decarbonization, we need good research background and good research support. So with that, I conclude my remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Verma, for a very insightful talk and also highlighting the various decarbonization options that the Indian steel industry has. Now we'll move on to the technical session, which will be chaired and moderated by Dr. Kirit Parikh. I would like to invite Dr. Kirit Parikh, who is the chairman of Integrated Research and Action for Development. He has been a member of Economic Advisory Council for various prime ministers, and also been a former member of Planning Commission, and has sat on various committees related to the energy ministries. Welcome, Dr. Kirit Parikh, and please deliver your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Rangan. Thank you, Deepak, and I must thank Rangan and also Ms. Neha Verma for their very interesting observations in the inaugural session. I think what Ms. Verma has pointed out is that, steel industry has a long gestation leg, at least the lifetime is very long. So it is not easy to think about decarbonization, say in 1930 or 1940. Fortunately, our target for 270 net zero by 2070 gives us some time. And I think it's very important that we, as is pointed out, that R&D of the right kind takes place. The study that IRADE has made has explored the critical evaluation of different role of hydrogen in 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 making steel industry emissions come down. And we have assessed various techniques and their economics of it. And I think such a study is important in designing, even giving some, finding out alternative futures, and also pointing out the kind of R&D we should be really doing now, because unless we do with some kind of a long-term perspective as to what is the most important or most promising avenues for decarbonization, we would not be ready when the time is required. So I think with that, let me invite the speakers and give us some understanding of what this study has done. So the first of all, let me ask Mr. Arpan Gupta, Additional Director and Head Mines, Cement, Powers, Coal and Renewable Energy of FICCI. So FICCI is our joint collaborator and joint sponsor of this project and meeting. So maybe may I invite Mr. Arpan Gupta.
Sure. Thank you, Professor Parekh. Thank you so much for co-organizing this project, this session today, and for this report. So my address, I would just focus largely around, the objectives, a little bit about the sectoral perspective, and then obviously in terms of what are the key objectives for this project report and what we are looking to achieve from today's interactions, because we have eminent set of industry, academia. So thank you so much. It's a pleasure on behalf of FICCI to address you all in this interaction on decarbonization challenges and solutions for the steel industry, when we are particularly looking at hydrogen as one of the options. My special regards and thanks to all the participants, panelists, Madam Neha Verma ji, then Professor Rangan Banerjee. Thank you everyone, and all those panelists who are to follow in the technical as well as the panel discussion. As we all know, steel is by far the most important and multifunctional metal or the commodity, we can say, and it's have usage across various traditional sectors, be it infrastructure, construction, automobiles. But nowadays, with the emerging applications of healthcare, maritime, defense, there is a lot of traction for the steel we are finding in the economy. And therefore, if you currently look at, we are not only the second largest producer of the steel globally, but also we are the second largest consumer. In terms of numbers, currently we stand at 155 million tons per annum capacity, and targeting, as Ma'am Neha Verma highlighted, we are targeting around 300 million tons per annum capacity by 2030, and then 400 or plus 400 by 47. But why am I highlighting on these numbers is, or these targets, is a particular fact that, when we are talking about steel sector, the sector is highly energy and carbon intensive, and the growth in itself will bring challenges in terms of the environment sustainability. Therefore, as has been discussed, and as we all know, steel is one of the hard to abate sectors. It has recently, because of the various agreements, because of the various initiatives across the globe, it has received special attention owing to the potential use of low carbon hydrogen, could be in the form of green or blue maybe, to reduce its fuel combustion and process-related carbon emissions. The solutions and initiatives towards decarbonization and environment sustainability management, as we have been discussing, would be the key drivers for any initiative, be it in terms of capacity expansion, be it in terms of transition towards a special steel that the Indian steel industry would be taking moving forward. We have been, ma'am highlighted numbers in terms of, we have 12%, the steel sector is 12% carbon emitter in the country, 2.55 metric tons, while globally it is 1.8 metric tons of CO2 emissions per ton of crude steel. But if you look at, currently we are standing at 242 million tons of carbon dioxide and CO2 emissions, which are projected to jump to 837 million tons in the next 3 decades. So there is a 4 times increase from where we are today. And that's why, this project, this study, and this report became all the more critical. Also, if you look at, there is an increasing pressure, I would say, in terms of environment sustainability in the boardroom discussions, and as well as from the investors, that the steel sector needs to decarbonize moving forward. And therefore, it is necessary and imperative that we use better and new technologies, while we are trying to reduce our carbon emissions, and solutions like renewable energy, solar power, zero liquid discharge, they would become, a kind of norm in the future. Also, steel plants may utilize alternative fuels like we have been discussing biomass, natural gas, and hydrogen is one of those options which we are exploring through this project, which will help in substituting the conventional challenges in terms of carbon emissions that the steel industry faces. Also, the shift towards this green steel, the net zero steel production that we are talking about would depend largely on a, concentrated efforts from collaborative efforts from all the stakeholders, be it in terms of the regulators, be it in terms of the governments, the academia, like IIT Delhi, Professor Banerjee, be it in terms of the industry itself. When we are looking to, change the economies of production, the science of technology of production, the facilitating the investments, and stimulating the demand for green steel. Now that's a very important part that we need to have a demand for the green steel. We need to have that awareness also in terms of the consumer centric approach. As ma'am also highlighted, recent developments in regulations, commitments by nations across COP26, COP27 again reiterated the commitments made last year, and the governments are targeting to reduce the carbon dioxide CO2 emissions. The steel makers have for themselves set very high targets for decarbonization, targeting 25, 2030, 2047, and then 2050. So while the next decade will likely see carbon capture process modifications, CCU, CCUS, that ma'am also talked about, and efficiencies getting introduced into our production methodologies, getting all the way to net zero would require very high investments. And that's why that investors' confidence is of very critical nature and important. And potentially we will see an overhaul in terms of how steel is being produced. Therefore, decarbonizing Indian steel industry is challenging as substantial amount of new capacity is getting added to meet the growing steel demand. Whereas zero carbon steel making technologies, as was also highlighted by Ma'am Neha, would be commercially available, and they are not at present commercial scale, and they would be at commercial not before 2030. That's a very important benchmark here. Even partial decarbonization technologies also need to be considered, which may offer low cost emissions reduction in the short and medium term, because transiting towards a completely decarbonized or green steel, and especially with the help of fuels like hydrogen, would take some time moving forward, because of the pricing, because of the availability, because of the storage, transportation, and many other factors that hydrogen bring in itself when we are talking about hydrogen usage in the steel industry. And therefore, because of all these factors that I've just highlighted, FICCI and IRADE are carrying out this study on long-term decarbonization strategies for the Indian steel sector, with hydrogen as one option. The key objective of the project is to develop long-term, least cost decarbonization strategies for the industry, using hydrogen as one of the alternatives. And therefore, this second meeting in the series has been scheduled to take the perspectives, views, and understanding feedback from the stakeholders of industry and various other segments. Decarbonization measures such as establishing or switching to hydrogen-based steel production can be implemented either in greenfield or brownfield facilities. But when we are talking about brownfield facilities, it requires existing equipment to be modified and retrofitted accordingly, or need to be rebuilt, and that would again call for substantial investments. Therefore, it is very, very important that through discussions and input from various stakeholders, including governments, industry experts, academia, professionals, industry, and especially in this today's meeting, we are able to deliberate on the strategies and opportunities, and the set of challenges also, along with their remedial solutions, as a first feedback on our draft findings, which are going to be presented in the next few presentations that are lined up. And that's why this meeting has been called, so that we can take the initial feedback from our stakeholders as to are we in the right direction, what more needs to be added in the project and the report. And accordingly, we look forward to your suggestions and guidance, and how we can make it more inclusive and comprehensive. Thank you, Dr. Professor Parekh. Over to you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. May I now invite Dr. Anjana Das, who has been leading this study, to say something on the Indian steel industry and the future prospects and decarbonization challenges. Anjana.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Parekh. Good afternoon to everyone. I am sharing my slide. Can you see this?
Yes, we can see.
Okay.
Please go.
So thank you and good afternoon. So I will talk about Indian steel industry. Already quite a bit of have already been spoken by my earlier speakers, status and future prospects and decarbonization challenges. So before going to the topic, I want to spend a minute on project activities, objectives and activities. And then I'll talk about industrial status, technology, demand development, decarbonization challenges and decarbonization options. So the points already have been spoken. India is the second largest. Okay, sorry. This specific objective of this project, key objective of this project is long-term decarbonization pathways for the Indian steel industry with hydrogen as one option. This is supported by under the R&D program of hydrogen and fuel cell of Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. So other specific objectives are hydrogen demand potential in steel sector, hydrogen supply infrastructure requirement for the steel sector, cost of hydrogen supply and steel production based on different technologies, least cost decarbonization pathways, investment needed for transition, then barriers, policies and institutional framework. It is 18 months project. We have spent about, started in April, we have spent about 8 months. So different activities to be taken include review of Indian steel industry, projection of steel demand, assessment of future steel making technologies, both hydrogen-based and non-hydrogen, assessment of hydrogen supply technologies, infrastructure, supply caused by different technologies. Then finally, modeling least cost steel supply scenarios to develop long-term least cost decarbonization pathways, identifying abatement technologies, hydrogen demand and cost implications. These are technology, of course, make the key solution, but it needs also supported by policies and incentives. So we will we'll work on an activity on barriers for hydrogen technologies and then formulations of policies and incentives. As I said, we have spent 8 months on this project, and so today we will present the preliminary findings, whatever we have done so far. So I start with the industry overview, which has already been spoken by earlier speakers. So India is the second largest producer of steel industry, producer of steel. It produces about 144 billion tons of steel, and it has a large sponge iron production also. I think largest coal-based sponge iron production, about so together about 36 million tons. It contributes about 2% to industry contributes about 2% to GDP. Large-scale producers account for 63% of the production capacity, and remaining 37% comes from the small-scale producer. Finished steel consumption 100 million tons, and per capita steel consumption is about 75 kgs, which is low compared to world average 229 kg, and far behind if we consider China, which is 69 kg and still increasing. India's per capita consumption even lower than Egypt and Brazil. So this is a highly energy intensive sector, especially fossil fuels for use coal, non-coking coal and other fossil products. So it consumed about 70 million tons of oil equivalent in 2019, which is about 23% of the total industrial energy consumption. And direct and indirect emissions about 250 million ton and 75 million tons in 2019, which is again about 30% of the emissions of the total industry as a whole. Altogether, it emits about 10% of the emissions related to energy-related emissions. India has a long experience on steel production, so it applies several technologies, primary steel making as well as secondary steel making. So starting with blast furnace, basic oxygen furnace, it's a primary steel making technology processing iron ore to the final steel product. And this uses extensively coking coal to reduce the iron ore. Actually, primary steel making involves basically reduction of iron ore with so far with fossil fuels. Then it has scrap-based electric arc furnace and induction furnace, direct reduced iron DRI coal EF technology, DRI natural gas EF technology, mini blast furnace, basic oxygen furnace. So these are the some technologies which are being used currently, and they are all CO2 intensive. Yes. So globally, basic BF, BOF and has about 70% share, that is primary steel making. And secondary steel making, electric arc furnace has about 30% share, but that is little different in case of India. India has a 45% share of BF, BOF and then 55% EAF. The national steel policy, which was carried out in 2017, targeted to reverse this process with BF, BOF share of 60 to 65% and then EAF share 35 to 40%. And it also has a target about 2.2 to 2.4 tons per TCS per ton of crude steel by 2030 from BF, BOF technology, and 2.6 to 2.7 from the per ton of crude steel from other technology. And currently, BF, BOF emitting about 2.5 to 2.85 tons. DRI coal, heavily in CO2 intensive, emitting 3 tons. DRI NG, which emits about 30% of the coal-based DRI process, 1 to 1.5, and scrap EF about 0.5 to 1. This depends upon the also the grid intensity of the system. So what are the mitigation efforts going on in the country? So we have compiled some information based on published sources, and my colleague will show more in his in the next presentation. So now a lot of information have started to flow in, especially last 6 months. So what we see with the what we see, this is the ministry report which came about a few days ago. It says that with best available technologies and shifting towards scrap-based steel making, Indian steel industry can reduce emissions beyond its projected target. And then some of the private producers are also making some efforts. Tata Steel, which is a global producer steel making company with 20 million ton capacity in India, has recently installed the blast furnace carbon capture plant, and which is capturing about 5 tons per day of CO2 per day, and it is reused in the on site. JSW Jindal Steel Works, that is another major producer with 18 million tons of capacity within the country, has committed to cutting emissions by almost 40% by 2030. And recently, ministry also in their report has mentioned that near zero neutrality to be achieved in the second half of the century, so not before 2050. This is important for us, given in industry's long locking period. And so we have to design our net zero pathway, net zero target, net zero year according to this decision. So perhaps we will try 2050, 2060. These are the some of the years when we will develop our scenarios and pathways. So this slide, I show you the steel demand, total steel demand in the country, how it will progress in future. So we have projected till 2060 as because our long-term pathways will go to 2060 or even beyond that, because India has committed India has committed for total net zero emissions by 2070. So this bar gives the total demand of finished steel. So we start, so 2030, which is 230 million tons, that is coming from the national steel policy, which was made in 2017. That is a government projection based on 7% GDP growth rate and steel GDP elasticity as one. So beyond that, 2040, 50, 60, these are coming from IRADE's macroeconomic model that is based on GDP growth rate 7% plus, and also investment on urbanization, and then the infrastructure development. Those will fuel the steel demand. So you can see that 2050, we are projecting about 900 million tons of steel. 2060, it's about 2000 million tons of steel. So this is little, maybe can be little higher side compared to the projection you see by International Energy Agency, even TERI, which projects about 500 million tons in 2050. But this is also connected with the GDP growth rate, economic development of the country. So this can be assessed and reviewed, these numbers. And regarding the per capita steel consumption, 2030 figure again comes from the government projection, which is 158 kg per person. And that will go up to 213 kg per person in 2040, 554 kg per person in 2050, and so on. Just give you a little bit of context of Chinese numbers. So, so this is the way how China is going last 5 years, 2017 to 2021. So per capita steel consumption was 545 in 2017, and it is still increasing, about 700 kg in 2020. And although because of perhaps COVID, it has gone down a little bit in 2021, but it is in increasing mode. So this gives a little bit of the context how when we are looking into our figure. So decarbonization challenges of the Indian steel industry. While steel demand in many countries, especially European countries, has stagnated over last decade, perhaps, that is not the case in India. So those countries do not need to increase their capacity. Basically, they have to replace their capacity. But that is not the case for India. So India needs to add hundreds million tons of capacity in coming years, 20, 30, 40 years. So, but the challenging part is the current decade. If we go by the government projection, India needs to add about 150 million tons of new crude steel capacity in this decade, 2020 to 30. As Indian infrastructure is young, scrap availability is low. So India needs to go for primary steel making. Also, scrap-based steel making does not give the desired qualities, particularly for automobile sector. Near zero, and the main fact is near zero emissions technologies for primary steel making are not commercially available in this decade. So that is the truth. So given long as assets life, the industry is so steel industry is locking up high emitting technologies for another 20, 30 years. As a transition, India could add natural gas-based DRI-EF technology, which could be fitted with CCS later, because this technology is already available. There is a plant running in Abu Dhabi since 2016, which could be also converted to DRI-H2 technology in future. But the problem is India suffers serious shortage of domestic gas production. So share of imported gas is already 50%, and it is only growing. And regarding existing assets, these are young blast furnace, existing blast furnace stocks are young, about averages is 15 years. So it will survive another 20, 25 years, given its long lifetime. Then 37% of existing capacity owned by small producers with no capital to invest in better technologies, high cost of capital, like about 10 to 12% in Indian financial market, which is about, on the contrary, 4 to 5% in European market. And finally, steel needs to be produced at lowest cost to fuel India's economic growth. It has to be competitive in the international market to exploit the export possibility. But with these new near zero emission technologies or low emission technologies, definitely steel production cost will go up. And certain the documents report that it can go up even 90%. So these are the challenges in the current decade, the immediate challenges. And beyond 2030, India is not that, India in general is a technology dependent country. Of course, that is a bit of changing. So access to new technologies, low cost, abundant green electricity, CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage infrastructure, sequestration capacity, hydrogen infrastructure, then competitive price natural gas. These are the certain points which will shape the future transition of the country. So this shows the steel production cost from various based on various technologies. It is, we have taken it from the International Energy Agency's publication. So this bar shows that different technologies, starting with conventional technology, commercial technology, BF-BOF, then gas-based DRI-EF, gas-based DRI-EF with CCUS, which is commercial since 2016, and then smelting reduction BOF technology with CCUS and hydrogen DRI-EF. So you can see that cost, the shaded part at the top shows the variation across the region. So if we don't take that into consideration, overall about there is 10 to 50% increase in the in the cost of production based on new technologies. But then we have experienced high cost for new technology quite a number of time, and that has gone. Solar PV is the recent example. In 2000, solar PV used to cost $10,000 per kilowatt, and today it costs $500 or $600 per kilowatt. 90% fall in the cost. So with government, this has been achieved through government support, policies, and market and all. So this technology, also new technologies, we hope will behave in the same way. There will be technology learning, and with government support and policies and subsidies, it will come down and be comparable with the conventional technology. So once we have, since we have done the demand side, next step is of our exercise is to assess the supply side, how to supply least steel to the country to meet its demand at least cost, at lowest prices. So we apply some technology rich process model based on a linear programming from a cost optimization framework, which is technology rich, and it needs technology data on production technologies. So we need to give those information to the model, and that will be basically we represent each technology with its cost and technical characteristics. So these are the data we need to feed into the model for different time period. What would be the possible options? So we are preparing this table like 2020 to 30. Possible likely options will be refurbishing of the existing stock with energy efficient technologies, and also the biomass injection, some amount of even gray hydrogen injection in the blast furnace. And then possible new capacity addition will be based on perhaps again BF-BOF, because no near zero technologies are not available. So it will be perhaps again based on BF-BOF with fitted with CCS CCUS, and then DRI natural gas EFs fitted with CCS CCUS. So these will be the possible technology options into next 10 years, which we need to use as input in our supply model. Similarly, the similar way, we have to give the options for next subsequent decades like 2031 to 40, when there will be more new technologies will be available, near zero technologies like H2 DRI-EF, Hisarna CCS, and those technologies will be available. So our request would be to the industrial expert and expert from ministries to give us, feedback, advice about what kind of technologies should go, we choose as an input to determine our decarbonization pathways, and also relevant data parameter, because we have to parameterize our model with technical as well as economic data. So if they could guide us on this, so that would be very beneficial for this project. So I finish there here, and thank you for your attention.
May I now ask Dr. Deepak Sharma to make his presentation, which will be on current and future technologies. Deepak Sharma.
My screen visible, and can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to present on steel production technologies, current and future technologies. So basically, I will be talking about the emissions profile of different technologies, what are the targets and the initiatives being taken by the major steel companies, as well as what is the vision of the Indian government to decarbonize the steel sector, and also look at the various studies which have already done studies on the Indian steel industry and their decarbonization pathways, which will tell us on how challenges and why it is critical that we know which technology options do we consider in the model in order to forecast the decarbonization pathways. So firstly, if we look at the carbon dioxide intensity in steel production across technologies, when we compare across countries in the year 2019, you see that on the right, Ukraine, and then second comes India. So India has among the highest carbon dioxide intensity in steel production. And if you look at average carbon dioxide intensity, it is 2.1. And if you look at the blast furnace BOF route, which is almost 45% in case of India, it is 3 tons of carbon dioxide per ton of crude steel. And if we look at the electric arc furnace route, it's again at 1.5. If you look at other countries, the developed countries, a carbon dioxide intensity is quite low in the electric arc furnace route, simply because we use a lot of direct reduced iron in our electric arc furnace, which is based on predominantly coal in India. So if we look at the emissions profile of blast furnace, BOF technology and EF technology, because we need to know, be it carbon dioxide capture or usage of hydrogen, we need to know which process produces the highest emissions. So if you look at the blast furnace BOF route on the left panel, you will see that out of 2.2 tons of carbon dioxide produced per ton of hot metal, almost 70 to 75% is produced in the blast furnace. That is 1.5 tons of carbon dioxide per ton of hot metal. So that is why many of the initiatives on capturing carbon is also concentrated first on blast furnace, and then other processes like coke making or basic oxygen furnace. And this study, which has been done in 2021, have considered the electricity intensity of the European market, which was around the US market, which was 460 kilograms carbon dioxide per ton of megawatt hour. But in India, the grid intensity is at a much higher level. It is almost 721. So the challenge becomes much more greater. And if we look at the alternate pathway which we have of electric arc furnace, which is the DRI EF pathway, although it produces less, it is less carbon intensive, emissions intensive as compared to blast furnace BOF, but Indian DRI EF industries primarily almost 82% is based on coal. So coal emits almost twice, coal-based DRI production produces twice the emissions of a gas-based DRI system. So again, the challenge, and India also suffers from low quality coal. So that is why a lot of this DRI, direct reduced iron based on coal, is produced by the small industries, the micro, small, medium enterprises. So the pollution is much more because they use lower quality of coal in their production process. So when we look at the major iron and steel production technologies which are currently present in India, we have the BF technology, which emits around 2.2 to 2.6 tons of carbon dioxide per ton of crude steel, which and this is 45% share currently. And even in India's future capacity expansion for the next 10 years, if you see the 5-6 projects that are coming on, 4 out of 5 are based on blast furnace, basic oxygen furnace route. So this is the future expansion plan. If we look at the other coal-based DRI, EAF, electric arc furnace and the induction furnace route, it again produces a lot of pollution from 2.8 to 3.2, as I told you, because it is based on coal and low quality coal. And 82% of DRI production in India is based on this low quality coal. And most of these units are small scale units with high carbon dioxide emissions. Then we have the gas-based DRI EAF, which emits almost half of the emissions of a coal-based DRI EAF plant, but that production is only 18%, and their share has almost remained stagnant due to non-availability of cheap domestic natural gas. But there are new technologies that are being tried. For example, coal gasification-based DRI EAF, which is being tried by Jindal Steel and Power in Angul, Odisha. And what it does, it uses synthetic gas from gasification of domestic coal for reduction of iron ore. Then you have the 100% scrap-based electric arc furnace and induction furnace, which produces the least amount of emissions. But in India, there are very few plants which are 100% based on scrap. So most of these electric arc furnace and induction furnace plants use a combination of scrap as well as direct reduced iron, which is produced through coal. So again, their emissions are much greater if you look at the complete life cycle. Then you have the Corex oxygen converter Konark technology, which is being tried by JSW Vijayanagar plant in Karnataka and ArcelorMittal. And they have both an oxygen converter and an electric arc furnace, but they also produce the same amount of emissions as a blast furnace, basic oxygen furnace would produce. And then we have the blast furnace EAF technology, which again generates CO2 emissions almost equivalent to BF-BOF technology, around 2.5. So if you look at the carbon emissions intensity and targets for major Indian steel companies, these are we are considering 4 companies which have given their emissions target currently. Tata Steel, Steel Authority of India Limited, which is a government company, JSW, Jindal Steel and Power. So they almost combine to make 47%. They have a share of 47% in India's finished steel production. So in 2021, if you look at their carbon intensity, it varies from 2.43 to 2.66. But Tata Steel has taken an interim target as well of 2025, where they plan to reduce to around less than 2. And in 2030, their target is to get their carbon intensity emission to less than 1.8. But you see, Steel Authority of India has so there is difference in the targets that these companies have also set up for themselves, depending on the constraints that they face. For example, Steel Authority of India Limited has much more older plants, inefficient technology. So the kind of investments that are required to bring down the emissions are quite high as compared to Tata Steel, which already has, or JSW Steel, which already has the best available technology installed at their plants. And this is, I mean, this can be clearly seen through the government and company strategy in short term, medium term, as well as long term. So Ministry of Steel in their annual report 2021-22 have come out with the short term, medium term and long term strategy on how to decarbonize the Indian steel industry, as well as these private and government companies have also given their targets. For example, Ministry of Steel wants to achieve, Indian steel industry has to achieve emissions of 2.4 tons of carbon dioxide emissions per ton of crude steel average across the industry by 2030. But the short-term strategy, for example, for direct reduced iron is to increase utilization of gray, brown hydrogen in natural gas-based plants, and also opening up of pilot plants to infuse green hydrogen into these plants. For the blast furnace, basic oxygen furnace route, there is need to increase more pulverized coal injection to decrease coke rate and also reduce the dependence of India on imports of highly priced coking coal. The volatility of coking coal prices have increased in the past 1 year, and it makes Indian steel industry non-competitive if the prices continue to increase and we continue to import. In terms of long-term strategy for direct reduced iron, there is, if green hydrogen, infusion of green hydrogen is successful in the DRI industry, the government might plan to mandate across industry. So the replication of injection of hydrogen in DRIs across industry would be mandated. And if you look at the BF-BOF, there is setting up of pilot carbon capture utilization plants, convert carbon dioxide that is captured to ethanol or methanol. So these are pilot plants. And again, the strategy is, if these pilots are successful, to implement it across the industry. In terms of initiatives that have been taken by the government, 2 DRI green hydrogen pilot plants are being set up with the help of ArcelorMittal and JSW for blending 2% of green hydrogen into DRI processes. If we look at Tata Steel, this short Tata Steel is also getting into scrap recycling in a big way, and because they want to increase the charge of scrap into their processes. Currently, it is 4%, but and Tata Steel in their European plants has a blending of 16% scrap, and in India it is just 4%. So the plan is to now get into scrap recycling and increase the share of scrap in steel making. The best available technology, increase in the renewable energy, so that the emissions of electricity come down, internal carbon pricing as well, to take into account the emissions the processes are generating. Tata Steel also wants to get into scrap-based electric arc furnace. It was predominantly BF-BOF based, but it wants to get into scrap-based electric arc furnace. It wants to shift from natural gas to natural gas from metallurgical coal, and upscaling pilot of CCS and hydrogen. And long-term strategies to implement the Hisarna technology, which is being tried now in Europe to India, and usage of hydrogen across the steel value chain, right from production, storage to usage of green hydrogen. In terms of the initiative, Tata Steel is already injecting coal bed methane. So the production of coal bed methane in India is increasing over the last few years. And there is this way you can actually supplement domestic coal bed methane and inject it into the blast furnace. So, and also they have opened up a 5 ton per day CCS pilot plant at their Jamshedpur plant. So these are various. So I won't get much into details, but every major steel company has made a short, medium, and long-term target, and is already into pilot phase of different technology. For example, JSW Steel has opened up a CCU pilot at their Salav plant. Jindal Steel has set up India's first coal gasification plant, and at a later stage, they plan to apply carbon capture technology to it as well. And for Steel Authority of India Limited, it is installing the best available technology, and also plans to phase out old energy intensive units and improve the quality of raw material. So in terms of the technology options available, we have a host of technology options. So if you see, there are transitional technology and near zero emissions technology. So when we talk about transitional technologies, these are technologies that have to be piloted. These have to be tried at a smaller scale, and then open, for example, and they also depend on in which year these would be commercial. For example, at the bottom, you will see in which year that technology will be commercial, and the emissions per ton of carbon dioxide given. So the transitional technology has carbon dioxide emissions lower than what you have in the average BF-BOF technology, but the near zero emissions technology, they come into the picture after 2028, 2030. And these are a host of options which are available for India as well. And it depends on which technology option India would take. So in terms of levelized cost of these technology, which was shown in the last slide, it is clearly seen that these technology even in the year 2030, for example, application of carbon capture and storage makes the price of crude steel almost twice that of what is being currently produced by the average BF-BOF. India is among the lowest cost producer of steel worldwide, and it also has to compete in the international market. So how much of these technologies can be tried? So it would depend on which is the least cost technology option that is available. For example, even DRI, green hydrogen, in 2030 it becomes, and this levelized cost has been calculated by Mission Possible Partnership for India specifically. So all these numbers are for India, and it seems as if the green hydrogen option is comparatively cheaper to the option of applying carbon capture, utilization, and storage option, which is clearly visible if you look at 50% blending of DRI or 50% blending of biomethane. The cost is around 500, 495 compared to what you have in carbon capture, which is upwards of $700 per ton of crude steel. So basically, there have been 3 studies, international studies, and 2 studies which have been done in India as well from TERI and CEW, and outside it's Mission Possible, Net Zero Steel, and International Energy Agency. And these studies, the purpose of highlighting these slides are that all these studies have different role of technologies. I mean, for example, here we have DRI melt BOF 100 with 100% green hydrogen as the most prominent technology in 2050 for India, followed by DRI EAF with 100% green hydrogen. So these are the most prominent technology. But if you look at another study, which is it potentially has much more role for DRI EAF CCUS for India. So basically, it comes down to the cost economics as well as what the options are. For example, here in this case, even biomass for India plays a critical role between 2025 and 2040. Injection of biomass into blast furnace, which was not the case in the previous study, where biomass was even considered to be part of the technology solution. Although it was considered, but the role is pretty much less. For example, BAT, BF, plus biopulverized coal injection, the percentage is very less. So across studies, the role of different technology differs, and that is why it's important to consider which are the true technology options applicable for India. I will stop with my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak. We'll have another presentation by Dr. Anjana Das. Please keep it within your time limit. Anjana?
Yeah, I will do that. Deepak, could you please give me the shared screen? Right, yeah, okay. Could you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, thank you again, Dr. Parekh and all participants. So this presentation is about steel making with hydrogen. Recently, the steel sector, as we have already talked about many times, it is a hard to abate sector. And recently, low carbon hydrogen in steel making, low carbon hydrogen based on green and blue in steel making has got special attention. So green hydrogen produced from renewable energy sources can replace the fossil fuel used in the reduction of iron ore. It can replace coking coal, non-coking coal, natural gas. So reduced iron can then be used in the electric arc. Reduced iron can then be used in the, what is this? Just wait a minute, something got. Yeah. So reduced iron, then iron ore, reduced iron ore then used in electric arc furnace to steel making. Whole technology route is called H2DRI EF technology. So it started with hybrid. Hybrid is a joint initiative by SAC, steel production company in Sweden, Ilkab, iron ore producer, and Vattenfall, which is Swedish utility. This initiative aimed to replace fossil fuel in iron ore reduction with hydrogen produced with electrolyzer using green electricity. And in July 2021, hybrid pilot plant already has delivered first green steel of 100 ton to Swedish automaker Volvo Group, and they have a aim of getting industrial scale industrial scale technology by 2026. That is their ambition. Other initiative includes ArcelorMittal, which is developing a project in at their Hamburg site in Germany. So and has an ambition to have 100% green hydrogen based industrial scale plant of 100,000 tons by soon. Also since 2019, ThyssenKrupp, the German steel maker, global steel maker, which has been testing use of hydrogen in a blast furnace in Germany, replacing a proportion of injected coal, and they have ambition to have a H2DRI plant by the mid-20s. What is going on in India? So my colleague has already given you some overview. So India launched National Hydrogen Mission in 2021, and steel industry is their stakeholder, and they have proposed some 2 pilot plants and so on. Also recently, Niti Aayog, that Indian policymaker, they have projected the hydrogen demand in the country. This report came very recently, about 6 months back. So they projected hydrogen demand for all possible sectors, including steel. And for steel sector, they are projecting hydrogen demand will be about 0.7 million ton in 2030, 2.7 million ton in 2040, and finally 8.1 million ton in 2050. They don't give the perspective on steel industry, but we did the back calculation, and assuming it takes about 55 kg of the hydrogen to make 1 ton of crude steel based on published figure, we make our own calculation. So it can support about 49 million tons of steel, the green steel by 2040, and 147 million tons of crude steel by 2050. If you see 147 million tons and our demand projection, it is not significant. It will be about perhaps 15-20% of the total production of the country. Also, I want to point out, this has a huge, electricity implication. If we go by again published sources, about 3,500 to 4,500 kilowatt hour per ton of crude steel green electricity is needed. So average about 4,000 kilowatt hour per ton of crude steel. And if we calculate again, it translates into about 600 terawatt hour of green electricity will be needed to support 147 million tons of steel. So which is about 40% of the electricity, total electricity India is producing today. So it has a huge green electricity implication. So so to look into the hydrogen infrastructure for Indian steel industry, we needed to look into the iron ore mines, iron ore resources, then location of the steel plants, and availability of renewable sources like solar, wind, etc. So if we see that, so in this map, so you can see iron ore resources are concentrated in primarily 2 zones of India, that is central and eastern states, whereas renewable solar PV and wind, they are available in western and southern part of the country. So it is important to examine the economics of transporting iron ore versus transporting electricity or transporting hydrogen and so on. So this process we have to do it, we have started. So we started with the assessment of cost of green hydrogen production, first one, then we can add storage and transportation and so on. So we have started assessing levelized cost of green hydrogen, what it would be in Indian context. So we considered 4 electrolyzer technologies: alkaline, polymer electrolyte membrane PEM, solid oxide electrolyzer cells SOEC, and anion exchange membrane. Each of them have different kind of technology readiness level. Alkaline is already commercialized. It is working. It is being sold. PEM is also commercialized, and other two are different level of availability in laboratory scale and so on. But each of these electrolyzer has its own positive and negative points. For example, alkaline, obviously it is commercially available, and it has a high stack life, which is important. I will explain in my next slide. And then, but it is not compatible, not comfortable with the variability of the electric load, because these, if they are used for green hydrogen, they will be connected with solar or wind, which are highly variable. So this particular technology has that negative point. Next one, PEM. PEM has a comfortability with variable load, but the point is it needs the critical materials like platinum, iridium, and so on. Third one is SOEC. It is at lab scale. So it has it provides high efficiency, but it provides high efficiency, and also share of stack cost in the total system is low. I will explain why that matters. Similarly, anion exchange membrane also has a low share of stack cost in the capex. These matters. I'll explain you. So these slides present some of the parameters which influence the levelized cost of the hydrogen, green hydrogen production. So this is not only capex or electricity price which are important. Important capex is obviously important capex of the system, and you can see it's declining for all technologies. We have taken data from international published sources like IRENA, NREL, Oxford Institute of Energy Studies, and so on. So capex is declining for all electrolyzer technologies. And system efficiency is another important parameter. We have measured it in kilowatt hour per kg of hydrogen, so it should decrease. If we measure energy efficiency, it should increase, but we have measured it in kilowatt hour per kg of hydrogen, so it should decrease, and it is decreasing, although not at a high level, but it is decreasing. Third component is stack life. It is important because load factor of the whole system, whole electrolyzer, determines the cost of production in a great way, because higher the load factor, lower the capital cost component in the cost of production of the green hydrogen. But higher the load factor means higher use of stack. That means higher, and that contributes into higher erosion of the stack. So you need to replace stack. So you need to invest again after 7 or 8 years of the stack life, where electrolyzer life is 20 years, you know. So that increases cost, that incurs additional cost. And also important is the share of stack in the capex of the system. So you can see alkaline and PEM have higher shares in the total capex, because if once your the stack get eroded and it has to be replaced, you have to replace with this amount of capital investment. Whereas other two have a lower cost, lower share in the total capex. So here I present the levelized cost of green hydrogen based on these 4 technologies. And this is it's a source of electricity is hybrid mode, because it is green hydrogen, so it has to be green electricity. So it is a combination of solar PV and wind. And you can see we can get up to load factor for about 40%, because wind has the load factor in India about 20 to 25%, solar has about 22%, and some amount of hour will be overlapping. So maximum you can get green electricity about with 40% load factor. So with that, load factor has a important influence on the cost. So with that load factor, the cost definitely going down despite other, because other the parameters are influencing. But so key point is that that magic number, which is $1 per kg of hydrogen, that we don't get even till 2050. I think in 2050 we get for the alkaline one, which is the cheapest one, something about $1.4 per kg. So we have done another case also for when load factor is even lower, 22%. So plant will be connected only with solar PV. Electrolyzer will be connected with only with solar PV with 22%. So obviously economics gets even poorer. And last in 2050, we get a lowest cost is about $1.7 per kg. So no way it is $1 per kg that we hear often. So, but if India explores its wind offshore, then maybe situation can be little different, because wind offshore offers much higher load factor. For example, in Europe, in North Sea, wind offshore is offering in some of the countries even 60% plant factor. So India needs to explore that part also. So with that, perhaps a load factor can be increased, and so that levelized cost can be brought down to some extent. So that is all about my presentation. So thank you for your. So next step is we are working on storage and transportation, etc. So thank you for your attention.
May I now invite Dr. Mukesh Kumar, who is the Senior Advisor of the JSP Group Advisory Services. Dr. Mukesh Kumar.
Thank you, Dr. Parikh. And Deepak, can you just give me the for sharing my presentation?
Yes, I'm doing that.
Yeah, can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
We can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my views. And what Dr. Deepak and Dr. Anjana Das has told, there is not only hydrogen, but there are a number of technologies available which can decarbonize steel sector. That opportunity is there, and we have to see that how we should encash those things. Second thing regarding hydrogen, yes, what Dr. Anjana Das has told, it has implication. But one thing we have to keep it in mind, that today, whatever hydrogen technology we are talking, it has one negative side of it also. That reduction of iron ore with hydrogen is an endothermic reaction. And if we have to follow the path of hydrogen, then we require a lot of external source of energy. It is for heating the hydrogen, it is for heating the iron ore, and it is for heating the other things. So because India's position is slightly different, because today our consumption is around 120 million ton, and we are one of the lowest per capita consumption country, as mentioned by Neha Verma ji and Dr. Banerjee also. So this is increasing. So if what is the option available with us? So that we have to see why, where we are and why we should go. Because today you will agree that steel making is a carbon intensive, and we don't have any other alternative technology available other than natural gas or scrap. And Madam Neha Verma has already told, both we are having a limitation in India, but still demand has to go. Our Gati Shakti project, other things are going there. So why we should say it is a hard to abate sector? Because there is no other technology as on date available. Most of the technologies are either in the developmental stage or in the nascent stage. And at this moment, we cannot rely, whether it is hydrogen based, whether it is molten oxide electrolysis based, or whether it is something. So what options we are having? This point I don't want to cover, that as already told, that ours is one of the highest CO2 emissions. We are producing around 2.5 to 2.6. But we must keep it in mind, we cannot compare ourselves with global this thing. Because globally, as it was mentioned, people are using scrap base, and our electricity grid, what Dr. Deepak has told, it is around 721. But officially, if you see in all central electricity documents and other thing, it is crossing even more than 850 kg per unit of electricity against 300 to 400. So when they are using that type of grid electricity in even scrap base also, that's why their consumption goes very, just 50% than us. So at this moment, because India's grid is mostly coal-based grid, so we have to see when we are comparing India's with globally, so these factor has to be kept in mind. And if we have to maintain a temperature of 2 degrees, means we have to reduce our emission to around 5 million ton by 2050. But if you see in actual as on date we are going, our emission will be around 2.7 gigaton. So from 2.7 billion ton to 500 million ton, it requires a sharp reduction. And it means we have to produce steel with an intensity of around 0.2 or 0.3 only. Since looking into our demand, so we have to find out other ways. What other ways are there? If we see, we are looking now all the three emissions, whether it is direct emission coming from our steel making, BF, BOF, coke oven and other things, whether we are having indirect gas emissions like grid-based electricity, can we look into renewable energy? Can we look into nuclear power? Because nuclear power is another option where cheapest and continuous power is available. And then third is other indirect GHG emissions there. So right now our focus is on 1 and 2 only, but we have to look how we set control all the 3 emission in it, so that we are in actual sense can achieve our zero neutrality. So what options we are having? Like Dr. Deepak has told, we have a number of improvement technologies available, which has potential to reduce around 25 to 30% CO2 reduction. These are best available technology, whether use of waste heat recoveries, use of natural gas, use of syngas, use of hydrogen injection in gas-based DRI or blast furnace, use of plastic waste, carbon capture. These are the technology which are readily available. And if we start using these things, it can reduce potential around 25 to 30%. Another this thing is there. If we start using scrap, but we are a young economy, we don't have that much scrap available. Today, out of 120 million ton, only around 24 to 25 million ton of scrap is available. If this scrap rate continues even by 2030, we will not be in a position to get more than 40 to 50 million ton of scrap. And even if we go to around 2047, we may be getting around 110, 120. But that time our requirement will be around more than 400 million ton. It means scrap-based production in our country, it is very, very difficult to cross more than 20 to 25%, because all other countries are also putting pressure to start converting from conventional route to the scrap route. So the availability in the global market also of the scrap and other things will be very, very limited, because most of the country will be diverting towards that thing. The last option is your breakthrough technologies, whether we go with the green hydrogen-based technology, biomass and other things, whatever we have told, but we have to see whether those technologies are there or not there. So looking into these things, even World Steel Association has given a global roadmap that all the industries globally should concentrate in all the three. That first we should start implementing best available technology so that we can achieve the step 1, where we can achieve around 20 to 25% reduction. Second is by scrap, another 10 to 15%, and last is this thing. So if there is no one solution available today, we have to use combination of technology so that by 2050 or 2060, and as our Honorable Prime Minister also has told, by 2070 we have to come to achieve. Because we have to keep one thing in mind, that Sustainable Development Goal number 12 has clearly mentioned that we have to be a responsible production and consumption pattern. And unless we are in a responsible production and consumption, we cannot say that we will go on producing this thing. We cannot use technology in a way which destroy our environment or which destroy our planet. So that thing focus has to be brought in here. So looking into this thing, what we have today available with us, in my opinion, we have 5 pillars available. One is the CO2 minimization, as we have mentioned, like Jindal Steel and Power, from where I am below. We have already started using coal gasification, and coal gasification is a roadmap for ultimately switching to the hydrogen, because only you have to change to the hydrogen. And in coal gasification, the beauty is you capture all the carbon dioxide. Like today also, Jindal Steel and Power Limited is capturing around 2,000 tons of carbon dioxide every day. And I think this is the only organization which is capturing so much carbon. But now we are starting working on the second part, this captured carbon, how to utilize it. Similarly, resource utilization, like we have to bring focus on our mineral beneficiation. We have to go for a zero waste approach so that whatever carbon dioxide minimization we can do, we should adopt. Second is your carbon avoidance, like scrap-based production is there, heat recovery from slag and other things is there, heat recovery from waste of gases is there, like coke dry quenching is there, dry quenching of slag is there. These are having capacity to develop, produce around 20 to 25 megawatt of power per million ton of steel. And if that much power we produce by these things, equivalent amount of electricity we can avoid from the grid, and hence we can minimize our CO2 emission. Then another factor is the carbon circularity. Today, everybody is talking that CO2 is bad. But can we look into something that, because there are two reducing agents. One is the carbon monoxide and another is the hydrogen. If we can convert somehow carbon dioxide into carbon monoxide, then the carbon circulatory chain can be established. Similarly, we are having coke oven gas. In coke oven, we are having some methane. So if we extract those methane gas and convert all the carbon dioxide which we are producing into syngas by dry reforming with methane, then we can minimize our dependency of fresh requirement of coal, and carbon will remain in circulation. So these are something like there. Similarly, steel industry, we are looking into various options, because today government has a plan that 20% of our petrol to be mixed with bioethanol. So all these things, CO2 and other things, like new technologies have come. So we can convert into bioethanol, we can convert into methanol. And another option is biological. Can we look into algae oil production? Because algae oil also is having a huge demand, and where only two things are required, carbon dioxide and sunlight and seawater. So wherever any seawater and the things are there, we can also look into these things. So in my opinion, if we focus in these 5 pillars, we will be in a position to create our long-term strategy and minimize our these things. So as I mentioned, syngas is one base thing. If you look into the CO2 minimization, another is the natural resources, means what today we are not using low grade ore, but we have to concentrate so that my coke consumption is reduced and all the ore is utilized better. And similarly on the recovery side also, like in CO2, when we are having coal gasification plant, you can recover number of products. And when you are recovering number of byproducts, initially coke making also. So the energy saved here is another thing. Like blast furnace slag is there. So if you use 1 ton of blast furnace slag as a replacement to clinker, it means around 0.5 to 0.6 ton of carbon dioxide is reduced in cement industry. Similarly, other products, whatever we are making here. So it is not only one industry, steel industry, we have to see where we are using in other sector also. So it means we have to bring focus on scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3, so that overall CO2 reduction, what we are looking for, not only industry, but overall, that also can help in this. Like Jindal Steel and Power, we are already working with IIT Bombay. We are working with National Chemical Laboratory, Pune. We are working with IIT Roorkee. What we are trying to develop is, we are trying today, solid oxide electrolysis was used, but that requires high temperature, means 600 to 700 degree temperature. Can we develop some catalyst where the CO2 can be converted into carbon monoxide at say maximum 100 degree temperature? Laboratory scale, whatever IIT the Bombay has done, whatever other people are doing, like IMT laboratories there, they have made success in this thing. But now the next step is how to take these laboratory scale trials into our either pilot scale or in the commercialization. Since we have a target of around 8 to 10 years, means by 2030, if we bring focus on carbon circularity, in my opinion, whatever our long-term strategy is there, without waiting for hydrogen, what Dr. Anjana Das has told, the price of hydrogen is so high, how much it is required. Without waiting this thing also, we can achieve our long-term decarbonization objective. This is another what I mentioned, how we can do this thing. And with this thing also carbon, because carbon capture and storage, if you are considering, because we have to keep one thing in mind, most of the steel plants are located on the eastern side, and most of our oil fields and other things are located in the western side. Wherever this thing carbon capture has been used till now is for enhanced oil recovery. And in enhanced oil recovery, because we don't have much field available in the eastern side. So we have to keep that thing in mind to enhance. Focus has to be brought not on storage, but on a utilization. Because storage is your permanent liability unless you are using like in enhanced oil recovery and other things. So that additional burden on steel production cost should not come. If we are producing byproducts or we are using for alternative making, so we can in a position that we can earn additional revenue from this thing, and then this will additional carbon capturing will not be a liability on me. So this hydrogen technology, everybody knows today hybrid route is there, everybody is working. This is left side is your blast furnace route and right. But right side also, if you see, as I mentioned, everywhere we require renewable energy. Unless renewable energy is there, we cannot. We require electric arc furnace. Electric arc furnace also has to be your renewable energy based. Your iron ore is there. That also has to be heated to a temperature of around 1000-degree temperature. That also has to be a renewable type of source. So looking into this thing today, no doubt we are looking for 500 gigawatt of power by 2030. But today, are we ready for hydrogen transition in iron and steel industry? It is a commodity. International price will guide, because if we start producing at $1,000 or $1,200, we will be out from the market. So we have to select a path where we remain competitive in the global market, at the same time are in a position to meet our CO2 emission directives also. So in my opinion, hydrogen and steel making, if you see today's scenario is capex is very, very high. Even hydrogen today, world hydrogen requirement is around 90 million ton. But in 90 million ton, only this thing is there. So looking into this thing, today what hydrogen cost is there per ton of steel, as Dr. Anjana Das has told, 55 kg of hydrogen is required, but practically it is around 70 kg. So today for 1 million ton plant, we require only around 50 to 55 megawatt of power. But if it is a hydrogen based, it will be requiring around 500 to 600 megawatt of power just for hydrogen generation based steel making. So this requirement is huge. Definitely hydrogen is a solution, but in short-term time, it looks difficult. So similarly, hydrogen-based DRI, people have gone up to 70% hydrogen. Going 100% hydrogen may take some time because the cost difference right now is huge. So what I can say is decarbonization strategy may influence our future growth of the steel industry. Coal gasification with CCU may find a wider acceptability, for which Government of India has already made plan for coal gasification and other things. Because of our limited supply of scrap and natural gas, we should bring focus on alternate opportunities available for decarbonization. Otherwise, we will be left behind and we will not be in a position to export our steel and other things in a place like Europe and other place where carbon tax and other things are already coming. So in my opinion, it is not only one solution. We have to consider all the options for long-term strategy for decarbonization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mukesh Kumar. I think you really pointed out some of the options that we should consider, and thanks for that. We now move to a panel discussion. You know, we are talking about net zero. Our strategy for net zero is first power sector. We put as much of renewables as possible and make it net zero. We are also concentrating on transport sector by electric vehicles and other things. But still, there are many considerations. Some of the trucks and you could say even planes and ocean transport might require hydrogen as a solution. But anyway, the crux of the problem is, can we bring down the cost of hydrogen? And I would invite Mr. Anurag Pandey to speak first, because he has to go out. And perhaps he can tell us about how Reliance is going to go to its 1.111 target and bring down the cost of hydrogen to less than $1 per kilogram. So, Mr. Pandey.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Parikh, and good evening to everyone who has joined. As you mentioned, sorry, I will have to leave in another 10 to 12 minutes because of the prior commitments. But I just wanted to, it was just so nice to hear everyone about the options and obviously the hydrogen in steel industry. But let me tell you, there has been a very nice publication recently by Hydrogen Council and McKinsey together. And you can look at, green steel coming out to be a very important aspect of the hydrogen trade, right? I mean, the reason very simple. If you have iron ore and obviously if you have a steel industry available to you, and if you have a capability to also include renewable electricity as well as the green hydrogen, instead of transporting or let's say trading hydrogen, it's far more effective to sell green steel, right? So the green steel is being looked at as a sort of a carrier for the steel. Manufacturing would be able to afford the hydrogen cost, which many of you have highlighted that the levelized cost of the hydrogen is obviously as of now they are more than $3, $4, $5 depending on what are the capex and what are the opex you're looking at. But let me come to the point which Dr. Parikh raised is how are we looking at bringing the cost of hydrogen to $1 per kg, right? And that's very simple when you look at where all the costs are involved, right? I mean, our strategy is basically to look at the entire energy sector, and we our fourth business, we have obviously hydrocarbon business, retail business, and digital business in the form of Geo. But the fourth business, we are focusing on the new energy, how you go about, let's say, moving the energy in the coming decades. And we are focusing in new energy right from solar to generate the renewable electricity, green electricity, and taking that green electricity to produce hydrogen, and also storing that electricity in battery to use that electricity at the later, let's say, in future, or then the produced hydrogen back converted into electricity by using fuel cell. Now, these four pillars, which are the foundations to our new energy business, are essentially nothing but the entire end-to-end value chain of the new energy business. Now, what is critical, as the others were also talking about, the 60% plus cost of the green hydrogen is basically the electricity. So it is important that not just the capex, but also the electricity cost needs to be brought down further than what they are today. And that is why Reliance is looking at not just building the solar farms or let's say the renewable farms to produce electricity, but also going to the manufacturing of building the equipments and the machineries which are required to generate this electrons and the hydrogens, what we're talking about, which is obviously includes solar panels, the PV panels. So we are starting right from sand and going all the way to the building modules. That way we can control the capital cost. Obviously, the scale matters, and our chairman has already declared that we are looking at something like 100 gigawatt scale. We know that the country itself is looking at something like a 450 gigawatt of installation capacity by 2030, and we are talking about 1/4, 1/5 of that size. So obviously, we are bringing a scale, and that allows us to let's say allows us to bring the cost down on the capital front. And similarly, we are doing on the electrolyzers. So you have to make your own electrolyzers to bring the capital cost on that down as well. Now, if you combine the capital cost with the smart operational strategy and obviously, using the solar to produce the cheap renewable power, and combining other parts of the value chain, you can bring the cost down to $1.5 per kg. Now, this is obviously a production cost. This is not a supplied and landed cost of the hydrogen. So you will have to look at the smart way of the co-locating these plants or storing and transporting this hydrogen to the end applications. So, it's not one single answer. How do you go to $1 per kg? We know from the production point of view, but what you have to also worry about, what is the landed cost or the utilization cost of hydrogen in the end application. I would not be able to give the entire details. How do we obviously reach to that $1? But we have a pretty much good roadmap how we go there, and these are some of the foundational principles of reducing the electricity cost, reducing the electrolyzer cost, going for round the clock of electricity as well by using the storage technology. So there are various elements of the new energy which enables you to reach to the low cost of hydrogen, which would be then open the doors of using the hydrogen in many of these applications, various industries for the heat application, obviously to produce some of the materials, as well as, we have joined here to look at the steel industry. When you come to those kind of a cost parity, the green steel becomes, very competitive. And as I said, the hydrogen industry is already looking at how to use green steel as a carrier for the hydrogen to do international trade, right? So cost is critical, and some of the aspects which I just described will build the roadmap for reaching the cost, so that hydrogen is used in various industries, including steel.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pandey. May I now invite Shri V.R. Sharma, Vice Chairman, JSC Group Advisory Services. Mr. Sharma.
Yes, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a very nice platform. I was listening to the previous speakers, including Mr. Pandey. He spoke very well on hydrogen. Then Dr. Mukesh Kumar, he gave a very detailed outlook as to how the industry can move to decarbonization. Dr. Anjana Das was, her speech was her presentation was very informative regarding hydrogen-based steel making, DRI, and then finally steel making. You see, the whole world is working now to decarbonize the steel industry, or to become net zero in terms of carbon emission. So this is going to little more time to understand how the cost economics will work. Everybody has told that at the moment, the people are thinking the maximum size of the plant is about 100,000 tons per year. And as per Dr. Anjana Das, in next 20, 30 years, hardly some 15, 20 million ton steel is expected to be produced through this particular route. This means a lot to be done to reduce the cost, and a lot to be done to reach to the right level of understanding in between governments as well as the steel makers. Now, if we see today, if we have to go with an end-to-end solution, that means a green energy, and then finally a green hydrogen, and then producing DRI out of it, and then making steel through electric arc furnaces. I think the cost of putting up a new plant is going to be 300% than cost of putting a plant through blast furnaces route. So $2.5 to $3 billion will be required to produce a clean 1 million ton steel. So this is too much. Then 3,000 to 3,500 kilowatt hour per ton of steel. That is again a very expensive exercise as of now. So what we have to do, we have to find out the right solution, as Dr. Mukesh Kumar has told, that we have to continue making steel through DRI route, but the DRI in Indian perspective, the best fuel is syngas, that is coal to syngas. Government of India should also think how to do the underground coal gasification, because the issue is do not burn the coal or do not bring the coal above the surface. So the second best alternate is many of the fields in the country, there we can do the underground coal gasification. So the underground coal gasification should be developed. There are many technologies player for the underground coal gasification, though it is a little expensive. And this can also accommodate the CO2 as a sequestered product. So we can take out the underground coal gasification we can do, and we can we can do the CO2 sequestration in those fields. So a detailed study from Government of India side is required to identify, like coal bed methane, we are already doing. So we have to identify whether coal bed methane or the gasification of underground coal that is possible. And I think it is possible. And there are many companies in the world, they are working on this. The moment we have underground coal gasification, then it is like any other fossil fuel, like a natural gas. So at least we will qualify from one stage to another stage. There's no need to bring the coal out to the surface, no need to do the outside on the ground coal gasification, no need to handle the fly ash, no need to handle the other chemicals or the byproducts. We can straight go to synthesis gas from underground coal gasification. So this is what I think can be a right solution for a country like India, and also the other countries where the coal is in abundance available. So it is in the interest of mankind that such kind of cheaper resources of energy should be utilized, and keeping in view the overall goal to reduce the CO2 emission. So two industry which are very rated very polluted in terms of CO2 generation. One is cement industry and the other is steel industry. Cement is also having overall CO2 footprint very high, though in terms of tonnage, CO2 in tons per ton of cement is only 0.6 to 0.7. But since the cement production is very high in the world, so overall about 6 to 7% CO2 is created by cement industry in the world, and around 4% CO2 is emitted by steel industry. So both the industries will have to work to decarbonize the cement as well as decarbonize the steel. And the best way is to decarbonize it through the syngas, that is coal gasification in India, and finally produce hydrogen out of syngas and utilize hydrogen to make DRI or into blast furnaces. So many countries are working on this, as we have seen from Dr. Anjana Das' presentation, that hybrid steel, they are going to produce about 100,000 tons by 2026 or 2027. ArcelorMittal is trying to produce about 100,000 tons by 2027. So similarly, there are many more companies, they are working. But the issues are how to have a green hydrogen and how to have a green energy. So these are the two big issues. We also seen from the presentation from previous speakers that the solar and wind together, the plant load factor or the efficiency level about 40 to 42%, whereas only one product, either solar or wind, will give hardly 18 to 20%. So this is a very serious, serious action as of now as to how to produce green energy and then finally green hydrogen. I'm not so bullish on green hydrogen in the very near term because this is going to take time. So till that time, as a transition, we should opt to produce coal gasification, coal gas, or that is called syngas, through the coal gasification route. I think that's the only answer. In India, more than 40% steel is being produced still through the rotary kilns based on coal. I think they would have to graduate to a coal gasification route, and we should now, the time has come that Government of India will have to take a decision to put a deadline that after this and this date and this year, no more blast furnaces will come in the country. So that indication Government of India will have to give, looking to the country's plan and necessity and the demand. So, but still the blast furnaces are coming in the country, and most of the expenses which are declared from 140 million ton to 300 million ton are based on blast furnaces. So when we are so serious, so my suggestion to Government of India and to the steel fraternity is that we should put a date, maybe 2028 or 2030 or 2035, whatever. So, or 2026, that after this date, the blast furnaces will not get the environment clearances, the new blast furnaces, I'm telling you. So once that is done, then, people will start thinking on the alternate source of steel making, and that is only one, and that is electric arc furnaces. And we do not have enough scrap in the country, so we have to be dependent on DRI. And when it comes to DRI, then it should be, of course, through syngas based DRI. So these are my views, and I would also like to request Government of India through this platform that Government of India should come the new norms for CO2 emission by steel industry. There are no norms today laid by Government of India that steel industry should not create more than this much of tons of CO2 per ton of steel. So those norms should be charted out. We should define those norms, and we should implement all those norms on a particular date, maybe 2028 or 2030 or 2035. So depending upon the industry and government dialogues, we do not want to make people starve for steel. Yeah, there should not be any starvation or the shortage of steel. The steel has to be there, but how fast we can lay the norms that this is the norm, more than this, any new facility which is coming in the country should not have CO2 emission from this point and above. Then only we can control it. Otherwise, it is a very lengthy subject. We'll keep on talking, and the true picture will not be seen. So there has to be a cutoff date, maybe 2030 or 2035 or 2040, whatever. So that has to be decided by government and the industry, and we have to have a clear planning how the CO2 will be captured and where this CO2 will be used. That is another problem, that today we do not know where and how to utilize the CO2 because there is no sequestration in the country, and the CO2 based the industry is not coming up. So most of the steel mills, they will be capturing CO2, but the CO2 capturing will not help them because there are no users for the CO2. So we have to find out that who all can use the CO2 across the fence, and then only this mission decarbonization will be successful. So thank you from my side. In case of any question, I'm available.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. May I now invite Sri Venugopal Mothkur, who is a Senior Specialist Director at Niti Aayog. Mr. Mothkur.
I think he has not attended. And same for Will Hall also, he is down with COVID.
I see. It's sad to know that, because we kept the meeting afternoon only to make it convenient for him to participate. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, and Mr. Paramjit Singh is also not available. He probably felt that Dr. Shri Neeraji has already talked about the ministry's view, so he didn't need to join. But anyway, thanks all the participants for this panel discussion. Let me say a few things on this. I think it is important that we get this view from as many stakeholders about this, their concerns, their perceptions, and their suggestions. I think this would really help us, and we really learned a lot from the various presentations that is made by others. And I really invite any of the participants who have any questions to say. I've got some number of questions on the question answer board, and I would ask Anjana to look at that. or maybe let me repeat them and you can answer them. By when does Steel Ministry expect to release the definition of green steel? I don't think we can answer this. What are the brown and gray hydrogen? Please explain this. And share, then there is a give the current age of BF, BOP plants is 15 years. Given this, and given the plans by various companies to add more BF, BOF in the coming years, all of these plants are likely to be operational till 2060. Can they be retrofitted with CCUS later? And wouldn't that increase the production cost of sustainability? Okay, Anjana, you want to take this? I will talk about other questions later, questions later.
Yeah, okay, let me take this. So regarding gray and brown hydrogen, so hydrogen can be produced from fossil fuel also with steam methane reforming process. So when it is produced from natural gas, it is called gray hydrogen, and when it is from coal, it is brown hydrogen. Then it can be produced from nuclear also, it calls pink hydrogen. And then when it is produced from natural gas or the coal, and then with CCS, it is called turquoise hydrogen. So yeah, these are the nomenclature.
Yeah, there was another question.
Question was about the blue hydrogen.
Oh, that is blue hydrogen, right? With CCUS.
Yes.
I think that is blue hydrogen. And okay, I have to look into actually definition. Yes.
The blue hydrogen is mainly when carbon dioxide is produced or utilizing that carbon dioxide, then hydrogen, like coal to hydrogen, we have coal, Ministry of Coal has prepared a report. But if that coal to hydrogen is produced by capturing all the carbon dioxide and utilizing into it, then it will be called as a blue hydrogen.
Yeah.
There is another question which says we have calculated the cost of green hydrogen production for a product. It was around $8 per kilogram against what was shown today is $4.5. Can you please explain or give the basis of the data? The second question is, can we not have WHRS for steel making? And another one is, we can use it for carbon fertilization in spite of EOR.
Okay. First question I answered. So actually for all technology, there is large range for cost, all parameters actually. For example, I remember for alkaline, capex is ranging from $500 to $1,000. So we have taken the average value. So that may make our cost, it's cost of one or two technologies at lower side, you know. And second question was WHRS. I'm not familiar with that term. If someone can give the abbreviation, then perhaps we can explain. And fertilizer, CO2 can be used in, if I understand correctly, CO2 can be used in, India produces large amount of nitrogenous fertilizer and urea especially, and CO2 is used in that production. So yeah, CO2 can be used for urea or other kind of nitrogenous fertilizer production.
Anjana, I just want to clarify. I think the second point he was asking, one is about this thing fertilizer, because fertilizer use is very limited wherever urea will be there. Where we are producing nitrogen and urea, there only that CO2 will be utilized. So if you see this Angul, we are putting a first coal gasification waste, our fertilizer plant, where all the CO2 will be utilized into the fertilizer making. But transporting carbon dioxide from different places and bringing it is a difficult task, because the demand of urea and other things also. Similarly, like I have mentioned in my presentation, we are having algae oil presentation, and algae oil is also used where this thing sea water is available. And I think this WHRS, I also could not understand. I was thinking it is something like waste heat recovery system and other things. If that is the case, because then this thing electrolysis technologies are going to come where people are using co-electrolysis of carbon dioxide and water together, And when we are using co-electrolysis of carbon dioxide and water together to produce the syngas, then those can be utilized for those type of applications. I think if we have understood his question, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think there are other questions about when it comes, about PM technology, and says if PM technology, how would it work when the power is fluctuating? And when is PM going to come at par with alkaline as far as cost of intermittent power operation is concerned? Then the question is about CCUS in steel. Where you going to focus first? Which is the steel mills? Multiple. There is sources of CO2, sinter plant, coke oven, BF, BOF, captive BP, etc. So which one is going to be the primary target for steel making? And are there any technology suppliers for syngas injection, DRI, rotary kiln? Go ahead with these answers.
Sir, like
you want to answer anything?
Regarding PM, actually PM is compatible with load variation. So not the other one, that alkaline. So that's why PM, the focus is on PM technology because it is compatible with load variation. But the issue is PM also needs some of the critical minerals like iridium, platinum. Deepak, you want to add something?
No, ma'am, I agree with you on that question. I can take the other one question on which, in terms of CCUS, which needs to be concentrated. So it was asked whether to concentrate in terms of carbon capture, to concentrate on sinter plants, coke oven. I think the focus is to capture CO2 from the blast furnace, because as I showed in my a figure of the blast process emissions from blast furnace, basic oxygen furnace, 70% of the carbon dioxide that is emitted through the entire process is through the blast furnace. So I think primary target for steel mills would be capturing carbon dioxide from the blast furnace.
Deepak, just I wanted to add one more thing here also. When we are taking carbon dioxide, instead of capturing carbon dioxide, because cost of capturing carbon dioxide is also very high, around $40 to $50 per ton. So now the new technologies what steel industry is exploring is using off gases from blast furnace, sinter and other things, directly converting into bioethanol, taking hydrogen from the coke oven. Because coke oven is also having 55 to 60% hydrogen. If some amount of hydrogen is taken and mixed with the off gases of this thing, blast furnace, sinter and other things, it can be directly converted into bioethanol, and like using LanzaTech technology from USA. For 3 plants have already come up, one in ArcelorMittal Ghent plant, 2 in China, and first plant is going to commission in Indian Oil Corporation, Panipat Oil Refinery. And first plant, few plants in JSPL, Jindal Steel and Power Limited, as well as in Bhilai Steel plant are being considered for producing bioethanol using these off gases, so that additional cost on capturing of carbon dioxide is not required.
Yeah. And that is what is highlighted in the Ministry of Steel strategy as well, where they say that they want to capture and convert it into ethanol or methanol, which is what.
Yeah, because we have to optimize the thing, because cost of the methanol right now, it is not becoming economically viable, because the methanol cost is only $300 to $400, whereas bioethanol cost is around $800 to $900. So that becomes economically more viable.
Then there are questions about, can we use hydrogen can we segregate hydrogen by coal gasification plants? Any technology provider? Can hydel plant powers be used as along with solar and wind, or perhaps even nuclear? And waste heat recovery system. There is also a question about why is that you have not shown syngas injection in the BF shaft as well as COG injection in the tires. These can decrease the CO2 footprint of the BF process by 35%. And finally, we see a lot of electrolyzer manufacturers cropping up in Europe and US. How much is the GI geared up to promote manufacturing of electrolyzers in India as a part of Atmanirbharta? Have you investigated SEWGS technology for utilization of BF gas? And can you throw some light on calculating the efficiency of electrolyzers? So I think there is a bunch of questions. Please answer. And I think we'll end then with these questions.
Yeah. So regarding hydro, definitely hydro also can be connected with the electrolyzer. But you know, India's potential is limited, actually 145 gigawatt, and India needs a lot of electricity. So and regarding nuclear, what I see, some studies from International Atomic Energy Agency, they talk about that because the nuclear provides 24 hours electricity, that would be very good for the hydrogen making. They talk about the nuclear based hydrogen making. Actually, that hydrogen is nomenclature is pink hydrogen. But since you know, hydrogen related activities lot more happening in Europe, and I follow mainly in Europe, and Europe is not that much in favor of nuclear. So I have not examined that way, but I should look into that, because nuclear is a good option for India. And IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, where I worked for a long time, so they are also trying to promote. So I should look into that option, because nuclear provides quite large, you know, option for hydrogen production. And what are the other questions?
Hydro plants.
Yeah, hydro plant also can be can be connected with the electrolyzer.
Yeah, in fact, the first fertilizer plant we built was based on the hydro capacity to power from the Bhakra-Nangal project. But now subsequently it became far too expensive than the other fertilizer manufacturing technology. So go ahead.
Yeah, so hydro potential is limited in India, and what we see quite substantial potential of especially solar PV. So all the time, whatever projects are coming up, they are focusing on solar PV, mainly solar PV, and some extent also wind. So hydrogen, the hydropower plant also can be connected with electrolyzer to produce electricity. But the problem is we have limited hydro, and solar PV. So part it's called that we have unlimited potential. So that's why all the countries are examining basically solar PV or wind-based hydrogen production.
I would also point out hydropower is will be used mainly for balancing renewable power plants.
Yes.
So
yes.
I think. What about any other questions? Thanks.
Two more questions were there, sir. One was about segregation of hydrogen from syngas or other gas. So two technologies are already available. One is the PSA technology, that is called pressure swing adsorption system, and second is the membrane technology. So if you want to recover hydrogen from these things, so both the technologies are being used, and these are commercially available to extract hydrogen either from coke oven gas or from syngas or anything if you want to do. But we must keep it in mind that whenever we are producing hydrogen from the coal gasification, coal is not having any hydrogen. It is produced by converting carbon monoxide into carbon dioxide and hydrogen. So then separation of this hydrogen, if it is required coal to hydrogen, yes, it will be through PSA or palladium based membrane technology depending upon the magnitude. And second is about use of syngas in blast furnaces. Yes, already some trials are going on, but because we know that hydrogen is an endothermic reaction, so large amount of hydrogen cannot be directly injected into the blast furnace, because immediately furnace will be cooled down because it extracts a lot of heat. So that's why only a limited amount of hydrogen and limited amount of this thing, that balance has to be made. So a lot of people are working. Some of the technology supplier like SMS and other things, they are also working on different technologies, converting blast furnace into two zones. Upper zone can be used as a DRI, bottom portion is used as a melting furnace. So in time to come, we are very, very hopeful that new technology intervention will definitely help steel industry to decarbonize the industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. I think we have had an interesting session, and now I would request Dr. Jyoti Parikh Executive Director of IRADE, to conclude this. Is she not there? Then let me conclude this. I think we are thankful to all the participants, and I think we have had a very useful thing. We have learned lots of possibilities that we need to examine and consider this. And that was, as I said, our major objective of this seminar was to understand the concerns of different stakeholders, their ideas and their suggestions. And we will try to incorporate as many of these as possible in revising this study and carrying it forward. And we'll come back to you again. Thank you all for participating in this.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Parekh, and thank you everyone, all the panelists and participants for joining us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.